Greetings gamers, today we're going to be discussing whether 3D printing is the end of the hobby as we know it. Every couple of weeks I see the same kind of post somewhere online. I saw this awesome 3D print. Miniature companies must be quaking in their boots. How long before there are no physical miniature companies and people just download their miniatures and print them at home? Is 3D printing destroying the hobby? Well, today I want to talk about 3D printing and why it's not going to destroy the hobby. Firstly, a couple of caveats. This isn't going to be an in-depth overview of the process of 3D printing. There are plenty of other channels where you can get that sort of thing. But I'm going to be talking a little bit about how the process works so you can understand it better. For those of you with no idea how 3D printing works, the basic premise is that a machine lays down multiple layers of material to build up a 3D object. For our purposes as a miniature gamers, there are three different types of 3D printer that we want to concern ourselves with. The first of these is FDM, or Fused Deposition Modeling. Now this works by running a wire of plastic filament through a heated nozzle, and then that melts the plastic and that's laid down layer on layer to build up the object. Next we have stereolithography, or SLA, and digital light projection, DLP. Both these work in broadly the same sense in that they use light to cure a section of liquid resin layer by layer. Now both SLA and DLP are considerably more expensive than FDM, but they allow for much higher quality prints. One of the most common things I see in these posts is someone looking at the quality of a 3D print and then claiming something along the lines of, oh, how long until we don't see manufacturers using cast materials anymore and it's all 3D prints. And they're always surprised at the quality that is achievable in a 3D print. Well, printing high quality pieces for miniature gaming has been around for a long time, and in fact a significant number of companies, ourselves included, use 3D printing to produce the masters for our models. These are then moulded and cast in either metal or resin or plastic to produce the end result. So the question then is, why not use 3D printing to mass produce your models as a company? Well, it comes down to three main factors. There's price, time, and technical knowledge. At the moment, purchasing a 3D printer that's capable of the resolution and quality that you need for a production level piece is a significant investment. In the last few years, there have been several models of 3D printer that have reduced in size and can fit on the desktop. Some of them available for under $1,000. But the problem with that is their small size means they're not ideal for mass production. Also, at the moment, the resin that is used in SLA and DLP printing is significantly more expensive than the resin that you would typically use to cast your models from. It can be as much as 10 times cheaper, gram for gram, to buy resin to cast than it is for resin to use in a 3D printer. So at the moment, the initial outlay cost as well as the cost in materials is just too high to warrant all but the most edge case examples of miniature mass production on a 3D printer. But as the technology advances, the price point is almost certainly going to come down to the point where, in terms of model to model, it's just as cheap to 3D print as it is to cast. However, that doesn't eliminate the other major factor that prevents 3D printing from being a mass production technique, and that is time. 3D printing is a very slow process indeed, and it can take hours per centimetre of model to achieve a 3D print. And this only increases when you increase the number of models that you're printing at once. Compared to resin casting, for example, if you are using a quickset resin, you can be demoulding your casts in as little as 10 minutes. Meaning a company can produce hundreds of miniatures by running a mould in the same time that it would take for a single 3D print to finish. But once the 3D printing is finished, your work isn't necessarily over. Many 3D prints require post-processing on them to finish them, and that could involve UV curing, sanding, sealing, or depending on the material, using different chemicals to smooth the surface. But that's not the biggest time sink when it comes to finishing a 3D print. Where most of your time is going to go with each 3D print is in the removal of the support material and cleaning everything up afterwards. When miniatures are printed, they are printed using support material. This stops outstretched arms and other pieces like that from sagging or breaking during the printing process. And these small little connection points have to be cut and sanded and made perfect so that you can then either sell it on to the customer or move on to moulding. Depending on the size and complexity of the print, this process can take hours alone per model. In traditional casting, this removal of support material only needs to be done once when you're cleaning your master model. After that, you pop it into a mould and run off multiple copies. The only material to remove on these production copies is where the resin has been poured in to reach the model. But even if the technology is to advance to where the machines that we use to make our models no longer need support material, there is still one major hurdle that's stopping everyone getting a 3D printer in their home, and that is the technological knowledge aspect of it. 3D printers are incredibly complex machines, and they are very finely tuned instruments. It only takes a little thing to go wrong and your entire print could fail. Not everyone has the time, the skill or the patience to learn how to use their 3D printer and set it up in the first place, learn how to maintain it and learn what to do when things go wrong. And even the machines that come ready to use out of the box still require a certain level of tweaking and technical knowledge to use before you even get to preparing your digital file for print, which in of itself requires a few extra steps, because you've got to prepare the orientation and the support material for your print before you ever hit the print button. Now you might be thinking, why don't companies just provide their digital files with the support material? Well, that's because not all printers are the same, and the support material you need for one printer might not be what you need for another printer, which means you, the end consumer, needs to put that model into some slicing software, which then determines how it will be printed. And even if you spend all the time learning how to use your printer and maintaining it and get that print out successfully, you're still going to need to finish your print. And removing all those support materials and cleaning up all those surfaces is going to take a lot longer than any metal, plastic or resin model, because there are so many more points of contact between the support and the model itself. But 3D printing does have a place in our hobby. Many people use 3D printers to create incredible looking terrain and vehicle pieces, which are ideal for 3D printing because their large area means that you don't have to use a lot of supports. You can use a fairly low cost printer and still get quite good results for large flat surfaces because they can be sanded smooth or filled in. And typically you don't have the same level of small detail that you have on a single miniature. There's also a strong market for individual customized miniatures, typically for people who want the perfect miniature for their tabletop RPG, and there are many companies that specialise just in selling those files. However, for these individual customised pieces, they certainly carry the price premium that goes along with getting this one-time piece. So will companies in the future offer digital files direct to the consumer? Of course they will. Some of them are already doing this, particularly with terrain, and now we're seeing it with some vehicles as well. Companies selling the STL files directly to the customer for them to print at home. And there are some examples of companies using 3D printers to make their mass production miniatures. All the examples I'm aware of are for very small scale miniatures, 6 to 10 millimeters, and don't require any supports because of their size. And as far as I'm aware, all the companies that are doing this are only doing it because the pieces they are producing are so small that they wouldn't be able to cast them traditionally. But are we going to walk into a Games Workshop store in the next 5 to 10 years, crack open a box of Space Marines and find it filled with 3D printed components? Absolutely not. It just doesn't make sense for the time and per model cost investment to produce that volume of miniatures with a 3D printer. It's still going to make more sense for them to 3D print the masters and then cast up models how it's always been done. But I want to know what you think the future of 3D printing in our hobby is. Do you have any experience with 3D printing? Have you got any 3D printed terrain or miniatures that you've made? Let me know down in the comments below. I've by no means covered everything to do with 3D printing and our hobby in this video, and if I've missed anything or you want to add anything to the conversation, don't forget to pop it in those comments below. We're looking forward to discussing it with all of you and talking about what the future of 3D printing in our hobby might be. And let me know if you enjoyed this style of discussion piece versus our usual Let's Make builds. This style of content is much easier for me to film and edit, so if you enjoy it, then I can put out much more content much more regularly. And if you did enjoy it, let me know down in the comments what sort of topics you'd like to see discussed in the future. Well, that's all for today, so until next week, look after yourselves and happy gaming. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for new content every single Friday. And if you want to keep watching, well, there's another couple videos for you to watch just over there. Happy gaming.